Hello, everyone. Um, Welcome to it. It's been quite an exciting moment getting here and, just having this opportunity to get to speak to all of you. My name is Boipelo Mabe, all the way from Johannesburg in South Africa. And I'm super excited to get to share a little bit of my journey and my experiences with you. I sure hope you did get to read my article talking about how to brand yourself online, particularly on LinkedIn, in the Skills for Youth and the All for Youth Africa handbook, because that's actually going to frame just a bit of what I'm going to talk about today. But before I get into talking about personal branding online and just the importance of that, I'll start off by introducing myself and for you guys to get to know me a little bit better. As I said, I am from South Africa, Johannesburg, but particularly I'm from a township in Johannesburg called Alexandra. That's where I grew up. That's where I was raised by my two incredible parents. And today, professionally, I am a digital communication specialist, particularly in the social media space. And my day job is literally in that strategizing online, creating content that speaks to organization goals. So it's really a great and interesting part of communications for me, because I come from a broadcasting background, TV and, analyzing current affairs. That's been my background. So, the shift from doing television type and broadcast type communications into digital has been quite an interesting journey, but a very exciting one. And, that's actually something I want to kind of highlight to all the young people joining us who are trying to figure out their careers. Make sure that you spend time actually understanding your space, your industry, right? So my discipline or my field is communications, and I've done TV communications, and now I'm in digital communications. So I'm still in the same space, but just kind of allowing myself to go through the different elements within this space. Because I usually have a lot of young people asking me, what do they need to study or what do they need to do to get into social media? And my thinking or my advice around that is, don't focus your energies trying to get into social media per se, but understand what social media is a part of. And it's a part of communications, it's a part of marketing. So if you can root yourself rather in the discipline, that will help you the most. But apart from that, in 2017, I was Miss South Africa First Princess. So that was a very exciting part of my journey as well. And, that experience also led me and opened me up to so much more and where I am today. But most importantly, I think that was the experience that helped me realize the importance of branding yourself. Of course, then, you're on a public platform and you have people constantly looking at you. But one thing I realized is that you don't need to be a public figure to have a personal brand. And people don't only look at you when you are a public figure. So even you behind the scenes working, you have a personal brand. Whatever it is that people say about you, that is part of your personal brand. And right now we are living in a time in a world where digital is taking over, and people will look you up online first before they even meet you, before they even, call you for an interview. So, that's why it's so important, because now you've got a persona and a profile that precedes you before you even go and represent yourself. And, that's exactly what we're going to be getting into today, and just looking at some of the the tips and the experiences and the advice that I have for you, based on what I've gone through from a personal point of view and from my professional point of view, working in a corporate and also working with various businesses and helping them establish their brands online. Because this is a broad element, but it's very exciting and it's very fun. And I think, a lot of us tend to look at this part as hard or only for influencers, but it's really not. Each and every one of us have a responsibility to build our own brands. And if you don't build your own brand, someone else will. So, rather you set up your story first before someone else creates a story for you that sticks online. So I will get into it. I hope you guys have your notepads and your notebooks ready to take down notes and to ask questions, because that's what I'm here for. I think more importantly, I want to get to hear from you guys and, to answer your questions and, be relevant to that rather than me just going on and on and on about all the tips I have for you, because there's a lot, trust me. So I will just get into, just part of what I had spoken about in the article, which I think is important to frame right now. Building your personal brand, and I think especially now we can all attest that lockdown has forced the world, not just small parts of our lives, but it has forced the world to really speed up the digital transformation. So right now it goes without saying that you definitely have to have an online brand that is strong, that sticks, and that speaks for you, because we're having interviews online now. Part of your application process, people want to know your social media handles. And if you are presenting or writing a cover letter that represents this incredible, well put together person, and then they go onto your Facebook or go onto your Instagram or Twitter and, come across something completely different, that might actually stop you from getting a job of your dreams, or, getting to a place that you want to get to professionally. So that's why, I'm going to take you through these tips, and, hopefully more questions will kind of come out of that. And my first one is to establish goals for the platforms. So that's obviously is going to challenge you to think about, why are you on Facebook? Why are you on Instagram? Why are you on LinkedIn, right? And I mean, a basic answer to that could be, oh, you're just there to socialize, you're just there to see what your friends are doing, you're just there to show off what you're doing. But it's very important to actually build professional goals around why you're using these platforms and what you want these platforms to actually do for you, because that's the most important thing. You have to have an idea of, okay, when I am posting on a Monday morning or posting on a Sunday afternoon when I'm chilling with my friends, this is what I want to create. This is the brand I want to create. So it doesn't even have to be a very, hectic plan. Just literally have three things. You want to attract the right people in your industry. You want to grow your following so that you can do more work that may bring you money. Just, top line, three things that give you a basis of why you are on these platforms. And that will actually help you as well to filter what it is you post. Because, a lot of people will say, I never know what to post, or I never know when to post or what to post about. So when you have those goals and you've established them, then you will know exactly what it is that you need to share and what not to share, because not everything needs to go on social media. And then my second point is to match your profile with the platform. So how I communicate on Instagram is very different to how I communicate on LinkedIn, for example. How I communicate on Twitter is different from how I communicate on Facebook. So, I mean, that came from my professional understanding of digital and social media, but it's something that you can also learn. And I think from a very basic level, you can already see the differences, that my profile picture for Facebook will never look anything like my profile picture for LinkedIn, right? With LinkedIn, you can't be having selfies with your shades and sunnies. Remember, that's the platform where you want to attract, your next employer, your next business partners, the next partnerships that you want that are going to propel your career. So you want to make sure that you are representing yourself in a way that will make the other person comfortable. And, this is one thing that I always advise people to do, is that put yourself in the other shoes of the person who's viewing your profile, right? Even when you're sending DMs and messages, put yourself in the other person's shoes to try and understand how they might be receiving your messages, your posts, and how your profile looks, right? And thirdly, my favorite one actually is to tell your story. I love sharing my story, because that's a part of who I am and what has helped and shaped me to become the person that I am. And I think in this digital world, sharing your story becomes very important, because everything kind of feels so detached. You just see this well put together Boipelo, not knowing where I come from, how hard I work to get where I come from. And what's beautiful about telling a story is that everyone has a story. And in fact, it's actually your story that sets you apart from other people. we could all be professionals sitting in a room with the same qualifications, with the same degrees. And the one thing that could make you stand out is your story, your journey, and what you've learned and taken from that. And I think it's very important in this time to try and find interesting and useful ways to use our backgrounds, to use our stories, to push ourselves forward. So I'll give you an example of this. During my Miss South Africa experience, while we were still in the finalist stages, we had quite big social media campaigns going on, and then I started my own hashtag, and I used hashtag daughter of a taxi driver. And the narrative around that was around me being raised by my dad, who's a taxi driver. And you see how people or society kind of receives people like that, forgetting that these two are people who are making a living, their fathers, their uncles, who are just there to also support their families. And I think, here in South Africa, we have very interesting experiences with taxi drivers on our roads. But for me, the goal of doing that was to kind of bring things home and make people understand that I'm actually a girl next door who's raised by, an incredible man and a woman who are just trying to make the best out of what they've got. And I think that was a point where a lot of people could relate to me, and people started sharing their backgrounds and, sharing how they were daughter of a domestic worker or, the son of a gardener. And, that's what brings people together from a human level. And now when you get into the professional space, they're able to actually relate to you as a person first, and they're able to actually respect that you've been able to overcome all the things that you have to be where you are. So that's the power of just, being able to tell your story and use it to actually move you forward. And not to say you're asking for a pity party, but I think that's what makes us humans and makes us different from robots, right? And fourth, engage authentically. The thing that I always try to do is to reply as much as I can to my inboxes, to comments, and engaging from a very, very authentic level. Talk to the person, talk to people on your platforms like you're talking to normal people. And I think also this can happen from where we, as the people who are after certain opportunities, how we engage, say, for example, with an executive or with a CEO, or a message that you're trying to send to someone you're trying to connect with, and you just fill it up with all this speak and all these big words that don't even make sense to you. Just be yourself and speak as you would, obviously staying professional, but just be authentic and real. A lot of people are just looking for that, and if you can just be yourself and be genuine in your conversations, then you will definitely be seen and be heard for the right reasons. And my final point on this is always make sure that you're providing value through your content. Everyone is looking for something to gain most of the time. So if you are going to kind of switch it up and be the person who actually provides the value, that's how you attract people. People are attracted to places and people that, provide them with something. So always kind of put that forward first before you come in with your needs or your wants. Tell people what you're good at. Show them how you're good at it and how you can actually help them. And that's actually very important overall and generally in networking. Instead of you coming from the perspective of how can you help me, always think about how can I help you. If there's a company that you want to work for or a specific person you want to, partner with, present yourself as value and show them what it is you want to bring to them or that you can bring to them. And in that way, there is no way someone will not look at you or at least give you a reply or an answer to say, whoa, here's someone who's, coming through with real value for me. When people, all they're doing is asking for more and more and more, it's definitely something that's gonna, put you forward. So with that said, those are my 5 basic points that I'm sharing with you just as a start to kind of get the conversation going and to hear some of your experiences or just some of the challenges that you guys might be experiencing or might have been, seeing during this time of trying to understand the digital world and, building your brand from a digital perspective. So I think I will, let me check on the questions. Or do I hand over to the All for Youth team now?
I think there's one question, Boipelo, and it says, in building a personal brand, would you recommend being on all social media platforms or only engage authentically on one or two?
Okay, that's a very brilliant question. So, no, you don't have to be on all platforms. So, for example, I am on all platforms because of, the media and public work that I did. But at this point, I have my main platforms, my primary platforms. So, Instagram and LinkedIn are my primary platforms. So it's important to understand which platforms are bringing value to you, or which platforms do you enjoy the most, and which platforms do you want to grow from. So it's important to kind of focus your efforts, because they're all very different and require different types of engagement and content. And I think realistically, you can only really focus your energy or excel in one or two. So definitely choose the platform that will contribute back to you the best and the most, and one that you enjoy. Social media is meant to be enjoyed, I believe. It's not supposed to be an additional task to your day, or an additional task to your work, but it's an extension of who you are, what you do, and what you want people to know about you. So no, you don't have to be on all social media platforms. In fact, I'm actually in the process of trying to I'm off certain social media platforms so that I can actually focus on building my brand more holistically on others. So yes, thank you for that question.
Great. And then we've got another question that says, how do you establish a personal brand as an employee? I think so many times it's something that we link a lot of the time to like influencers,
Yeah,
but how do you do it as an employee?
cool. So, the first thing that I would advise as an employee, or if you've been feeling like, oh, you can't build a personal brand, or you don't need it because of your background, maybe start by asking 5 to 10 people in your office how they see you. Maybe even ask them to write an email or like a note. Gather all those notes and read them and see what's common. That's basically your brand. Whatever it is that you will get as a response, that is your brand. Or maybe just talk to people that you trust. It doesn't necessarily have to be everyone. The people that you engage with, that you have a good relationship with, in your workspace, get that from them. And especially people who are senior to you as well, who will be honest, who will be able to give you, real feedback that is useful. So get that and read that. You'll be surprised at how people see you, because that's actually the basis of your personal brand. And then from there, start thinking about ways that you can either amplify the good things that they've said, or improve the not so great things that they've said, because I think many a times we live in our own heads, and then we think, oh, this is how they probably think I am. But most of the time, how we imagine how people think of us is usually negative. So I think that will help to kind of tear that out, and then help you to start thinking about the areas that you actually need to grow in. Because I think for me, I can give you tips on how to, go about building a personal brand, but those won't be useful if they are not relevant to your situation or where you are. So I would definitely advise that as a first exercise, to understand firstly what your current personal brand is by asking the people around you about it, and then pick out the strong elements that you want to continue building on, and then look at the weaker elements that you can start working on. Because in the workspace, your personal brand comes from potentially the time that you arrive, the time that you leave, the quality of work that you submit or present and share. It comes from the way you talk in emails. So, building your personal brand in that space comes from all those little elements and things. It's not necessarily standing in a stage and, presenting yourself, but it comes from the reputation that you build through your daily actions.
Great. I think there's another question, and it's basically linking to what you were sharing a little bit, Boipelo. It can be a little bit controversial, but it says, how does one differentiate between being an individual expressing about their issues such as politics and religion without affecting their personal brand and future employment opportunities or potential opportunities?
Yeah. Yeah, look, that's a big one and an important one. But what I can say is that you need to understand that social media is not your private platform, number one. Even if your accounts are private, even if you don't have that many followers, the fact is, for the fact that it's online, it's no longer just yours. It belongs to the world and it belongs to the social media companies that host our data. So I think having that understanding will also kind of help you in terms of what do you share and how far do you share. My personal philosophy for social media is keep what's personal personal, unless you want to share it, because how does sharing your personal opinion then build towards your brand? Those are the questions that you need to ask. Like, I might be having a bad day and feeling angry at the world for whatever reason, but that is no reason for me to go onto Twitter or go onto Instagram and talk about how angry I feel at the world, while I'm trying to build a personal brand. If I'm really angry and I want to let it out, I've got my friends and my family to talk to about. Unless if I'm talking to an issue that is current and that positions my brand as a voice in that space, then that's the only time I can think about then going to voice my opinions. Because I think by now we've seen how people's personal opinions have gotten them into trouble and have cost them their lives, their careers, their families, and so many other things that, you'd be shocked to actually realize that one small tweet can actually cost you that much of your life. So that's why I say, because of that, we need to understand that social media or digital platforms are not our personal and private spaces to express ourselves. Rather do that in your private space with your friends and loved ones, and understand that that platform is basically your billboard to present, what's true, what's real to you in a way that also builds towards, what you're trying to, your goals, going back to the first point that I made, that have goals for why you use these platforms.
Sure, that's good. I actually liked what you shared there about your social media platform is like your billboard, because so many times actually we don't realize that traditional media may have been, newspapers, things like that, but social media is now your actual billboard. I think just moving a little bit, we interact, especially as young people, we interact with a lot of young people who are just starting out their studies, not even careers. So you haven't really studied, you've just finished school. How do you start building your personal brand from the beginning of your tertiary career, for example?
Yeah. So, what's interesting now that I'm in the working world is that varsity is kind of like the place where you start your network, right? I think as much as we think about, friends and just social circles, those social circles will actually be your network when you jump into corporate. And it's quite amazing to actually see that happening and unfold with me right now, where, I've got friends in different organizations, different spaces. We help each other out. And that relationship started back in varsity. So think about it in that way. Varsity is it's a very short time, right? A very important but very short space of time. So remember that everything that is happening in that time is going to affect you, yes, in the future, but you have every strength and everything that you need in that time to shape how your life is going to be afterwards. Because trust me, all the things that you're doing, the reputation that you had in varsity kind of follows you. Because, I've heard people, say, oh yeah, this person was like this in university, and like, look at them now. Like, I think what's different about high school or university is that you can really change a lot from high school into, the working you. But varsity, there's just a sense of it. There's quite a bit of it that stays with you because you've already kind of grown into yourself, into your adulthood. So think beyond varsity. And I think that's what I'm actually trying to get at, is that varsity is a short space of time for you to equip yourself with the tools that you will need in the working world. But don't take it for granted that your what people know you for, or what they talk about, when they talk about you, or the brand that you've already presented will not follow you out when you've done or when you've graduated. So think about it as an extension or as a start of your working growth, because the reputation that you build there will kind of follow you a little bit into the working space. I hope that answers the question, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it covered it quite well. Boipelo, just shifting into future plans, right? So now you have a social media platform, or you have multiple channels that you are present on. How are you planning, or how do you suggest that you use social media to achieve your future plans?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So again, it just goes back to understanding your goals, right? Firstly, you need to know or have an idea of the kind of brand that you're trying to build. So I'll talk about my personal journey a bit. So coming from, a pageant, from being a beauty queen and jumping into corporate, that transition was a bit difficult in that it took people a long time to see me as a professional and not just a beauty queen, right? And when you get into the corporate space with that background, there is a little bit of, undermining. There is a little bit of, lack of respect for what you bring to the table from a professional point of view. Because, you come to the office, looking good and, strutting your stuff, you've got your background there with what you've done. And, people tend to kind of want to box you into that, to be like, okay, well, you can talk more on like the fun kind of campaigns and tell us about influencers, but you can't tell us on strategy. And those are the kind of things that, I kind of had to accept, to say, well, that is my background, but this is where I am. And I need to re-educate these people, re-educate these my followers on my brand. So that's actually been my my journey so far, re-educating the people who followed my journey from before Miss South Africa, while I was still a newsreader, into the pageant, and now post the pageant, because now I'm growing as a person, and you will constantly be growing. My career is also unfolding, so I cannot be boxed into the beauty queen box for the rest of my career. Like, I need to take people on a journey. So it's really about understanding your journey and where you want to be and how you want people to see you. So from beauty queen to, say, executive, I need to now look at how executives are branded on social media, how they how the best are doing it online, and begin to kind of match it up, or kind of, okay, cool, here's my goal, and then path my way, or like my journey into how I'm going to now express my transition from that point A to point B. So I think it's really about knowing where you are and where you want to be, and then being able to kind of pull that through little by little through your content. And yes, it does require a lot of thought. It does require a lot of consideration as well with the content that you share, the content that you post. But if you are already on the journey, it becomes easier to know what to talk about, because you'll be walking and working in your truth, in your current space. So for me, it's literally been using the influence and the platform that I've been able to build and gain from my pageant experience, my modeling experience, my TV experience, into now my professional experience, and kind of bringing that out through what I've studied, through my experiences from a work point of view, and just the things that I've learned along the way. So it can be hard, but at the same time, it can be simple when you've already, charted out that path for yourself. It really doesn't have to be perfect. All you need to know is that, well, this is where I am and this is where I need to be. So I need to start acting like I'm already there.
Acting like you're already there. That's so good. I think the last question that we have for now, unless there's any others that come through on Facebook, is an interesting one as well. I mean, we're living in an age where there's so many people who, because of COVID or what has been experienced, have not only been employees, but have also started, the whole thing about side hustles or being entrepreneurs. How do you think, in terms of building your personal brand, that you should navigate that process between employee and entrepreneur?
Well, first and foremost, from my experience, you have to be real with yourself, right? Because having a side hustle and a day job is a lot. I think we are definitely, I mean, we are in that culture of, have multiple streams of income, but multiple streams of income also requires multiple streams of energy, streams of time. And I think that's what we tend to forget in, trying to be these superhumans who do so many things all at once. So, I think for me, it's what's important is that you never want to diminish your brand or your capabilities by spreading yourself out too thin. So it's important to manage your time. So when I started out in corporate, I still had my South Africa responsibilities. So what I had to do was firstly be upfront and honest with my employer to say, well, this is my background, this is where I'm coming from, but this actually does benefit your organization in this way. Best believe that when I'm here, I will give my 100%, to the job and deliver. And when I'm not here doing all my other side stuff, same thing. I will be thinking of ways to also benefit the organization because, the thing with side hustles and working at the same time is that one suffers at some point or another. So I think it's our responsibility to find the place where the two marry, or a soft spot where the two, benefit from each other. So I constantly had to show and convince my employer that what I do as a side hustle is actually beneficial to the company, to my work, to what I bring to the team, and to what I bring to the table. And that's what you need to understand, that these are not two conflicting things that, you spread your time around, but these are two things that need to work together to help you be the best possible you. Because the last thing you want is to be working on your side hustle. Meanwhile, your work in the company that you're employed under starts to suffer, and then you're seen as incompetent, because that's also a brand. Now when you want to move and do other things, they can't recommend you well, because the experience with you is that, yeah, you spend your time doing all these things. They see your posts and shows social media. Meanwhile, when you have to deliver your work at the office, it's substandard. So I think for me, it's what's really important about the side hustle and your day job coming together, especially when you're trying to build yourself, is that you need to show up equally at both and understand that both of those things are building your personal brand. Both of those things are building the experience that you will need eventually to be that great person that you are trying to be in the process.
That's so good. As you were speaking, Boipelo, what I was just reminded of is something that a mentor had taught me early in my years of working, was remember focus. Focus is so important. And I loved also what you said about, multiple sources of income also need multiple sources of energy, because I think that's what we forget so many times. But thank you so much for your time. I don't know if you have any last words, any final, advice that you'd like to share with our community.
Yes, I do. Guys, I think plainly put, we are literally living in the future, right? We are literally living in a time where we always kind of used to talk about, and it's going to be important for us to be able to identify opportunities to help ourselves move forward in all our careers, even in our schooling and education. A master's that I would have needed to complete in another country, I can do it from the comfort of my home online. So make sure that you are taking advantage of opportunities like that are coming through. Now I can work for a company in the US without being there because of the digital transformation we are under just as a world. So I think it's important for us right now to begin to identify what those are for ourselves in our careers, in school, and make sure that we are gunning after those and taking complete advantage, because if we don't, we're definitely going to be left behind. And, I would hate for us here in Africa, to be left behind. I think for a long time, we've been considered as backward, as, the late bloomers when it comes to adopting new technologies and all of that. But I think right now we have the brain capacity and the technology to be able to put ourselves forward and propel ourselves as people, as nations, and as a continent. So yeah, that's my final words, to just identify these opportunities and take complete advantage of them with no shame whatsoever.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much, Boipelo, for your time today. And thank you for sharing with us. I know it's going to make such a big community difference for all for youth and all our young people that are watching, that are joining, and that can also benefit from these kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
Basically, we're going to be sharing some of your areas where people can link up with you, whether on LinkedIn or Instagram. We also want to share that we have an event coming up on the 2nd of November. Make sure to register. It's going to be an
Yeah.
opportunity for young people to connect with some of our senior leaders within our different partners in the Alliance. But thank you so much, Boipelo. Everybody,
Thank
if you do want to
you.
reach out to Boipelo, you can find her on Instagram and LinkedIn, if I'm correct, right,
Yes,
Boipelo?
that's correct. Yeah. Instagram
Awesome.
and LinkedIn. I am also still available on Twitter. But yeah, mainly Instagram and LinkedIn. You can find me there. Thank you all so much. And thank you for having me. Thank you to the team of All for Youth Sub-Saharan Africa. It's really been exciting to be a part of this. And yeah, I'm excited to see all the projects that you guys are going to be doing as well. And make sure you guys register for these events. That's part of taking advantage of the opportunities that are before us. So yeah, thank you so much.